What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Amelia Zachry. Amelia is an author and a storyteller who uses her personal experience with rape and sexual assault to not only inspire people who have been through similar experiences, but to bring light to the rape culture that sometimes we often push to the side. I am going to put another trigger warning on this video because we get into rape and sexual assault topics. If that is something that does trigger you or something that may potentially trigger you, please don't watch this episode. And if you do get triggered later on after you decide to watch it, I will put some links down below to some mental health resources. And just once again, know that you're never alone in your fight. And if you do need someone to reach out to, I am just a DM away. My Instagram link is in the description below. Amelia was so fun to talk to, and while this discussion is very heavy and hard to talk about, it is a topic that needs to be addressed. So I really appreciate Amelia's bravery and her honesty in this discussion. Now, before we get started here, guys, if you are listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on a podcast platform, share with someone who might need to hear this episode. It is a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Peace. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel. And we're live. Amelia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. So before we get too into everything, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So what kind of inspired you to start this book that you've written?
I'm writing a memoir detailing my life with post-trauma processing and a life with mental illness and a life that is possible after rape, trauma, and with through mental illness. And I actually started this because it was a subject that I wanted to talk to my children about. And I want them to know what I had gone through, and that grew into this idea of a book where I would possibly be able to share my experiences so people who have gone through and know that it is okay, that we can come through the other side. And I also wanted to help people who were living with people who had mental illness to understand, to have an insight onto what that experience is like. And hopefully through doing all this, I might be part of these conversations that normalize mental illness and eradicates rape culture and creates a world that's more just and peaceful for my children when they should step into the world on their own. And that's how the book came about.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm completely on board with you. I feel like there's this rape culture is just it it's hard, right? Because to talk about it, the word rape is just very a lot of people are
Abrasive.
aggressive. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are scared to talk about it. And in hiding that conversation, we kind of ostracize people that have experienced it. So it almost makes them feel like outsiders, which doesn't help anything at all.
No, it doesn't. And that's what it is, right? The rape culture is any preset notions within our society that aids and abets the sexual violence within our communities.
Mhm.
And so having these conversations where we are calling it what it is, I find this very important because I feel like sexual assault is not a word strong enough to describe, to encompass everything within like any form of sexual violence.
Mhm.
And rape is one that I'm not saying that it's better or less than or more than anything, but I think that that act deserves to be called what it is. And it makes people uncomfortable to use the term rape or to hear the term rape. But that is what it is. It is something that should be uncomfortable for us to talk about. I mean, it should be uncomfortable because it's not something that should be taken any lightly. And so I am here to have those conversations and share my experience. And
Mhm.
hopefully that normalizes it. I mean, normalizes the conversation about it and hopefully eradicates that culture that prevents us from talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love what you're doing because it is something that we got to talk about more. As someone yourself who's gone through it, I wanted to ask a little bit about the aftermath because I feel like a lot of people who hear about rape victims or sexual assault victims, they don't really take into account the long-term effects. There's kind of like, you've mentioned this before, there's kind of like a slut shaming almost for people who have
Yes.
gone through that. There's like this idea where it's like, why didn't you wear better clothing, or why didn't you just say no when I'm not even going to get into how stupid those questions are, but like the aftermath, how were you able to move on from this experience?
So in the first place, the initial aftermath when it first happened, I was within that whole culture of victim blaming. People asking me where I was, what I was wearing, what time it was, how much I'd been drinking, or how much everyone was drinking, or who I was with, and all these stupid questions that, like you said, that are really irrelevant to the issue of being violated. And so I took a long while to even accept it as rape. I'm only calling it rape. Unfortunately for myself, it's taken me 20 years, almost 20 years, 18 years. This year will be my 19th year since I was raped. Um, it took me almost 20 years for me to accept that that was a violation, because I believed that I had a hand in changing the outcome of my actions. I believed that it was my actions that caused me to be raped.
Mm,
I believe that had I done things differently, had I gone out, had I not gone out, had I not taken that drink, had I not been around the wrong people, I believed in my heart that I was the cause of my pain. And so I didn't recognize it or acknowledge it as rape until very recently, when I realized my husband was talking to me about, we were processing, I still process this trauma 20 years down the road. And so while I was processing, something clicked in me when I thought about my children. And I think something happens when you have children. You start reparenting yourself. And
mm,
that's what happened with me. When I tell my children something, I'm modeling it, right? So if I'm going to tell my children, should something like this have happened to them, what would my message be to them?
right.
And so I realized I would definitely say it's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done to change that. That is the actions of somebody else that violated you, right? That's what I would tell my children. And suddenly it clicked to me that, like, that's what I should be telling myself, because that truly I believe that rape is an act against somebody's volition. Rape is something that's done to somebody, right?
Mhm.
And so only with that did I understand and accept that it was an act against me. And only then was I able to start healing and growing. And I like to say that now I'm in a place of growth, because that acceptance allowed me to heal, allowed me to walk a path of healing. Even though I've been in treatment for almost 20 years now for that. No, I've been in treatment for almost 10 years now for post-traumatic stress disorder. And the wild thing with my experience was that, because I was under immense stress and trauma from the whole aftermath of being ostracized and being blamed and being hurt in that way, I got bipolar disorder.
Mm,
Bipolar disorder was latent, and then it was surfaced because of the immense stress. This is the theory that we have based on, like, my experiences. And so now I live with bipolar disorder, and um, that is a lifelong condition. That's not something that's going away from me.
yeah, man. Yeah, I will. I
There's
could
a
go.
lot to unpack there.
Well, yeah, there is absolutely, and I want to thank you again for coming on and talking about this, because it is an important discussion that I feel like a lot of us are uncomfortable talking about, but need to talk about. But I could go on for an hour about how much it frustrates me that in a scenario like one you've experienced, we blame the victim. It doesn't make any sense to me that all the blame goes to the victim, and then the other person in the scenario just kind of like, it's like, oh, they didn't mean it. Like,
Well, this is not something that's like just only when the rape occurs, right? Rape
right.
culture is from the time that we are children. We are
Mm,
raised that girls keep your legs crossed, girls wear your skirts that cover your knees, girls dress appropriately, girls stay in, like, safe places. What are safe places? Why are some places safe and some not, right? And then girls, don't put your hair in a ponytail when you run, because it's easier for somebody to grab your ponytail to assault you. Or, and then boys will be boys, and these things, sexuality is something that's explored by boys, and that I don't know. That's a whole other conversation, right? But this idea of rape culture is ingrained in our society.
Hmm.
It's from the time that we are children to the time we are adults, and then when something like this happens, it's almost uh, it's a social script. It's a social script that we all abide by because we've already been told raised this way. We've been told all these things all these years that when it happens, everybody falls in line and plays the social script. And so that's what I think is in abets sexual violence in our society,
Yeah.
in from my opinion.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. There, that script, we got to rewrite that. Holy crap. So after this incident occurred, does your outlook on life change after that?
My entire life changed.
Yeah.
My entire life changed. I feel like I was young. I was very young and I was a promising student and I was in college, in the college that I had worked very hard to get into. And within my first year, I was raped.
Mm.
And as you can imagine, being ostracized at that time in your peak of your social growth, at that point, I was ostracized and I went into isolation and seclusion, which then far away my dreams and ambitions that I had dreamt up for myself. And life became very difficult, very different because I had a different outlook on life and I was depressed. I was having suicidal ideation because loneliness can really do a number on you.
Hmm.
And it did on me. I was so lonely and isolated that I didn't feel like anything was worth living for anymore, even though I was only 19 years old. I was so young with my entire life ahead of me. But something like this happens and it ruins everything. It didn't ruin everything. I shouldn't say ruin because I'm here today.
Right.
I'm here and I'm living my life. And but I will say the trajectory was changed because I had to deal with the trauma and the pain and work harder to get myself to a state where I even wanted to be alive, that
Hmm.
I found meaning in my life or purpose in my life for me to be able to carry on and keep living, to see what my new life plan was. Because what I had dreamt up and what I had worked for before was all gone. With that one incident, all of that was gone for me.
Yeah.
And it may be simple to say that, well, all you had to do was like pull up your bootstraps and like pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get back on your path. And you should have, there was just one thing that happened, or there was just a blimp in your whole entire life. But it wasn't. It was this huge, tremendous thing that shifted my course
Hmm.
that I was not equipped to handle. I was 19 years old. I don't know if anybody at a different age, I don't, I don't sometimes I think about it, had it happened to me when I was older, or had it happened to me when I was younger, or had it happened to me in a different time, different space, like would that have been different? I honestly don't think so because I think this act of violence, it is so scarring.
Mm.
It takes a deep hole in my sense of self that it removed a huge part of me that now no longer exists. I had to rebuild myself and rebuild my trust in myself, in people around me. I had to rebuild my sense of self and my self concept of what I believed was myself anymore, because everything that I thought I was not anymore because I was violated. And so that's a very difficult thing for me to have come out of. And it took me many years. It took me lots of years of treatment for me to be able to stand here and say, today I am here, I am alive, and I am looking forward to my future.
Hmm. No, and it's great that you're out talking about it, because the unfortunate thing is that you were 19, and this happens far more than we often address on university campuses. In that age group, there's like a big number of people who experience something like this. I know very close friends who have experienced sexual assault, have experienced rape through university, like young ages, and they don't talk about it because they're afraid that opening up is going to make them, you know, isolated or kicked out of
Yes.
groups. But like their fear is validated. Like this happens. So I wanted to, one of my questions for you is, for people like that, like how were you able to recover from this? I know it took like decades, but what are the first steps that you took?
I didn't, so my first steps were very unfortunate. I was self-destructive. I was actively trying to kill myself. I was trying to act in a way where I was hoping something bad would happen and that I would passively lose my life. I was doing a lot of things which I would not recommend, and I hope that I wish that people don't go through, but I did. And I finally met my husband, I mean, then my boyfriend, who introduced me to a therapist, to the concept of therapy. I hadn't even I hadn't even considered therapy at that point because I was by myself. I had everything but to myself, and I thought I could handle it. But my behaviors were obviously not healthy, and they were not really going the way that it should have been going for someone who wanted to heal. But through treatment, I realized we backtracked and looked at all my behaviors and all the things that I've been doing in the past years. And it was only 8 years after the rape that I started getting treatment. So I had run my life into a rut for 8 years. And then when I started getting treatment, I realized all those behaviors were actually post-traumatic stress disorder. I was reflexive and responsive, reactive to triggers, to things that was from the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I realized that I was in need of healing. That I was starting to realize that there were things that were not going well. And I saw it from the eyes of the therapist that those things were not me. Those behaviors were not actually me. And I think that, and then we through treatment, put together a picture of what life would look like if that had not happened. And then I realized that there was an opportunity for me to still have that life,
Mm,
even though this had happened.
yeah.
I think that was the aha moment. Like, okay, I still want that life. I just didn't know how to get there. And so having help and therapy actually helped me get there,
Mm-hmm.
put me on track to reaching what I wanted to. And that helped in the healing.
Yeah.
But I wish the acceptance came earlier. I do wish that I had help. I wish that there were people who would reaffirm the fact that I was violated. Nobody did. Nobody I knew at the point did. So I did not receive that kind of help. And I'm out here not hoping. I well, I hope that if I had come across a situation like this and somebody had gone through something like this, I hope that I would have the sense to say clearly the most important thing that the person needs to hear is it is not your fault.
Yeah.
Something has happened and it's not your fault. And the sooner you can accept that it wasn't your fault, I think the sooner the healing begins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Because we've already talked about this, but immediately you're gaslighted, you're asked questions, you're basically blamed for the incident. And that's a big reason why people don't go in, because they feel shame, they feel guilt. They don't want to go in because then people are going to look at them differently, treat them differently, and that whole thing needs to switch because like you said, just hearing it's not your fault. I mean, I've personally never been in I've never experienced this, but I just from what people have told me, like just knowing that it isn't your fault is a great first step. And it's really what'll lead these people in the right direction almost.
Yes, I think that was the most important key point, and that there is something still worth living for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I cannot explain why and how that happens, that something like this, something ugly like this happens, and that is the thought in my mind that life was not worth living anymore.
Yeah.
There is so much value placed on sex, and there's so much value placed on aggression that when it happens, what am I trying to say? When we place values on the wrong things, I feel that
Mm,
when it happens, it's hard for us to accept that it's terrible. It's terrible for us to think that everything is over because this one thing has happened.
yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, I'm not minimizing it. And this is talking after I've distanced myself 20 years from it, right?
Yeah.
I wish I had known when I was younger that this is something that I needed to process. This is something that I need to heal from. However, my life still exists.
Mm-hmm. No, I get what you're saying. It's like life goes on, but definitely go get the help you need. It's just
Yes.
life will keep going. I get what you're saying.
And
So
but because when you're in so much pain, it's hard to see.
of course, yeah, you have
It's
like
hard to see that there's
yeah,
anything else
mhm,
outside of this pain.
right. Yeah, 100%. You get like not tunnel vision, but you get like a blurred sense
It
of
is. It's definitely tunnel vision.
yeah.
I mean, in my experience, I don't want to speak for everybody, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert.
Hmm.
But in my experience, it was tunnel vision. Something bad had happened. Something terrible, tremendously terrible, devastating had happened, and therefore my entire life, the value of my life, was put onto this one incident.
Hmm.
And I wish that I had a better perspective
Yeah.
to be able to have handled it. And I believe through conversations like we're having, or more conversations that eradicate rape culture, that change our conversations, redefine the conversations around these acts, I think that we will hopefully equip the young ones, or all of us. We're all learning at the same time, right? But most importantly, equip our younger generation to understand better, understand more, and hopefully it's not. I mean, not that I wish that ever happens to anybody, but when it does happen, I wish that the young people had better perspectives, and there would be less of us that try to take our lives, or who do take our lives. I know there are a large number of people who do take their lives, and that's terrible. That's devastating that we should lose these human beings who are so beautiful because they were violated and did not have the perspective or the help that they needed to heal and grow, to lose their lives to something like this.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I also feel like these conversations that we're having should be had with the younger generation. Maybe not I'm not an expert either, so there's got to be a
Yeah.
way to communicate with the children about
Yes.
like knowing your
Well,
self-worth.
I think like so I have 6-year-old and 4-year-old,
Hmm.
and they're girls. However, this doesn't only happen to girls.
Right.
This happens can happen to anybody. But we talk about things that are age appropriate, like boundaries.
Hmm.
I can teach my children boundaries
Right.
and make sure that they enforce those boundaries, make sure they respect other people's boundaries, and make sure that, we want to think that our children are all wonderful and perfect and beautiful and like they would do no wrong. But have we not taught them the right things, I don't think that they'd be able to step into the world and have the moral compass that we expect them to have.
Yeah.
And so simple thing like that, I think even at such a young age, if I teach them boundaries and I teach them how to understand boundaries well enough, that is such an important concept in rape. It's boundaries,
Hmm.
right? And you stepping into someone's boundary, breaching someone's space, someone's body, someone's property, whatever it is, those boundaries were not respected. And that if there was like I don't know what the answer is, but I think these conversations can still be had with children, however young they are, and grow on those conversations as they get older. And our conversations around rape has to be redefined. We have to talk about victim healing. We have to talk about how we're going to change the conversations for our children so that they grow into a world that understands these things better. And
Hmm.
should something like this happen, what is the social script? Can we change that? Can we change the things that we're saying? I think that's what we have to do together and work together.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like for me, I'm a younger guy, but the first time we like that I remember ever talking about like consent was first year university. We had an assembly, but like
Yeah.
we're already 19, 20. Like
Yeah.
these conversations should start like it's important, but they should start way earlier when they're you're
Absolutely.
when as a kid your hardwiring is still getting like fixed up and like you're figuring out who you are as a person and how you fit into the world, like that's when we should start having these talks.
It's those things like the boy is bothering the little girl because he likes her.
Yeah, no, that's got to
No,
change.
that's not okay. That's what I'm saying is we're aiding and abetting the sexual violence in the future because we're teaching children boundaries. We're teaching children things that really further perpetuate the possibility of things like that happening. And our conversations around it are not healthy.
Yeah.
And just because they have been doesn't mean they can't be changed. And I think a lot of it is starting to change. I've changed a lot since like this the whole Me Too movement and the women's rights marches, and I started reading a lot more and learning about a lot more. You think you know, but there's always more that we can learn, and I'm learning as I go, and it also has helped me in my growth because I'm hearing stories from other women or other people who have gone through similar experiences, and that has helped me change my outlook or grow my outlook and perspective on life and how to process and how to heal.
Hmm. Yeah, we can all learn a thing or two from each other. This is
Yeah.
where like communication and connection really kick in. It's important for right now. So when you said you're married, your husband, right?
Yes.
How so this is a great discussion for people who around my age or younger have experienced something, because like we've mentioned, you have tunnel vision, you don't think your life's going to go anywhere, but here you are sitting on the other side of this screen, a perfect example of how life can go on. So how are you able to form relationships and then raise children after an event like this?
So relationships was not something that was easy for me. Right after that, I was lonely and alone, and um, I got mixed up with the wrong people. I've been in abusive relationships where I was beaten in private and humiliated in public, and I took it because I didn't understand my self-worth, and my understanding of myself was so my self-esteem was so small, my confidence was so small, I was decimated. There's very little of me that was left, and then I got into these abusive relationships that made it even worse. And for the longest time, because I did not believe that I deserved love, or I didn't even understand what love meant anymore, because all my friends whom I had loved had turned on me,
Mm,
and whom I believed loved me had turned on me and told me it was my fault and didn't want to have anything to do with me. And so I didn't have anywhere to go to. And so I got mixed up with the wrong men. And then one day I met my husband. Something about him was different. I guess we say we were meant to be, or something was written in the stars. And I believed him and I trusted him. And perhaps I just got lucky that he was a good man and he saw something different, and our love was so strong, and I till this day I have a life that was before him and then a life with him. And so my life has changed tremendously. He's very, very supportive. He helped me through my treatment. When I first started going for treatment, I didn't even want to see a therapist. I didn't even want to speak. He sat with me and he would talk to the therapist for me.
mm,
And he did that for a couple of, I think about maybe 3 or 4 sessions until I was comfortable and I trusted the therapist. And then he said, okay, then I don't need to be here anymore. But he sat with me and held my hand and went through all those steps together. And it's not easy. I would say I am not easy. I have bipolar disorder, and that means I'm swinging from one end of the pendulum to the next. And he stood by me and learned about the illness, learned about the treatment, helped me with all the tools that he could get from the therapy too. And then we decided to have children, and we were told that I should not have children because I have bipolar disorder
mm.
by a therapist, by one of the therapists that we met. And we called bull on that, and we had children anyway. I have two beautiful daughters. And again, we we readjusted. I readjusted to life being with him. He readjusted to life being with me. We adapted, and then we had children, and now our circle has grown bigger. But my children are also participants in my life. They're not just like they're not just my charges. we are part of a family, and we talk to them about my illness. We actually tell them I have bipolar disorder, and then that means that sometimes I'm irritable, sometimes mommy needs some space, sometimes mommy's sad, and sometimes mommy needs to lay in bed for days, and this is what we need from you. We need you to be safe. Can you play in the bedroom next to me? Or can you make your own lunches? And we on the days, so I have bipolar disorder, but I don't live in my episodes. I have episodes and I come in and out of the episodes. So it's not like there's a huge misconception about bipolar disorder. I think people think you're either one way or the other, on two ends. I do get in and out of those episodes. Sometimes I'm hypomanic and sometimes I'm depressive. And also bipolar has so many different types of bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have is what I can speak to is what I have is bipolar 2. And even in bipolar 2, people have their symptoms manifest in many different ways. So for me, when I'm hypomanic, I'm highly focused, highly creative, I'm irritable, I am distant, I'm anxious, and all those things. Or if I'm depressive, I'm sad or grieving or just numb. And so my children see that, and there's no getting away from it. And we talk about me wanting to normalize. I want to be part of conversations that normalize mental illness, and that starts in my home.
Yeah.
And so we normalize it with our children. We explain to them what's going on so they understand. My children can make their own lunches. They know that, oh, okay, mommy's not feeling well. Should I get my own lunch? Yes, she'll get herself some crackers and hummus or fruits and whatever it is that we put out for them. My husband puts out for them whenever I'm in my episode. Or sometimes they know that, like, okay, I need some quiet time. I need not to be bothered, and they're okay with leaving that. And then on the days that I am good, our whole family comes together and we enjoy. I think we have a different kind of experience of life. We truly, truly enjoy every single moment that we have together because it's almost like borrowed time. We don't know, we never know this. It's unpredictable. Bipolar is unpredictable. I don't know when the episodes are coming. It's not like I can say if I do this certain thing, I'm going to be triggered into an episode. There's no certainty in it. And so we try our best to avoid the triggers. We try our best to prolong the stable states. And in those stable states, I think we found a way of appreciating life at a different level. And we truly appreciate time with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I don't think people think is possible because of the misconceptions and stigma around bipolar disorder and mental illness at all. I think people don't understand that there's a possibility of a life that's like what I have. But a lot of us live with bipolar the way I do, where you are high functioning and suffering in silence.
Yeah.
Because life still goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I've talked to a couple people about bipolar because the thing is, like, so I have depression, I have anxiety. A lot of us have that, right? And I'm not discrediting anything because those are terrible. Like, living with it is such a pain in the ass. But there's almost like this romanticization of some of these mental illnesses, like depression, like anxiety, like OCD. We throw these terms way too loosely. And then when we start talking about other mental illnesses that haven't been as romanticized, like bipolar, like schizophrenia, even like even suicidal thoughts are kind of romanticized in a way because people in one minor inconvenience will go, oh, I'll just kill myself. Haha. Like these like light jokes and light little sayings, they make it's just it's weird because once you get to mental illnesses like bipolar, people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But let's talk about how yoga makes me feel good. Like there, you can't have one and the other if we're gonna move forward and accept everybody.
Yeah. I think that it's been too long that there's the, again, social script around mental illness and being mental. Like you have an illness, you have a mental illness. It's almost like you have a some kind of deformity
Mm-hmm.
that should be hidden and shouldn't be, that you have to put your mask on and pretend you don't have it because other people cannot handle it or understand it. And that's the whole thing. Like even like we had talked about it being in the media. bipolar is in the media. I see it a lot these days. Like I hear it in like the way you're saying, like, oh, she's just bipolar. Oh, she's just depressed or whatever. And people, she has OCD, and people throw it around like it's just a joke or make light of it. And I see it in the media all the time. Like if there is somebody who's actually bipolar, it's a largely dramatized version of bipolar, right?
Yeah.
Where somebody's completely unstable,
Yeah.
either completely mental, like unstable, highly manic, or extremely depressed, or like switching between that. And I'm not an expert. Perhaps it does happen, but for the rest of us, that it doesn't. Life isn't actually that, where you're laughing 1 second and then you're crying 3 seconds later. That's not how it works. Bipolar is defined by its prolonged states of one thing or that another, increased levels of energy and activity for a certain prolonged period of time, and then also having a decreased level of energy or activity for another prolonged period of time. And that's what bipolar is. So I I could be hypomanic right now, and we are still having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what the world sees. I am high functioning because I'm a mother. I have two children that are very active in school and have things to do and places to be, and I show up. I take my children to school, I take them to their classes, I take them to their soccer games. I do all these things, but inside I'm suffering
Yeah.
because I don't want to be don't I used to suffer in silence, where I wouldn't say no, which exacerbates the situation where I'm already feeling troubled and I'm already feeling overwhelmed, but I force myself to try and do those things anyway because I don't want anyone to know that there's something wrong, or that makes me a lesser of a mother, lesser of a person. And so I tried to hide it, but I suffered immensely because that only prolongs my episodes or intensifies my episodes, and that I suffer in silence at home. And so I've learned now to have my boundaries and to be able to just say, no, I'm not feeling well, because it's a medical condition. And if I don't feel well, I ought to be able to say that I don't feel well. I ought to be able to draw my boundaries. I ought to be able to say no, or I ought to be able to step out on things and not have to perform on your A game at all times, because that is just not humanly possible. But I think that's another kind of pressure we have on mothers or as parents, to have to perform, put on a show for everybody. And I do, with the illness, with the suffering, and I put on my face, and I go and I show up and I do these things for my children. Or I sit in bed and I cry over the guilt of not being able to perform.
Mm.
Because some days when I'm depressed, I just cannot get out of bed. I just cannot put one foot in front of the other. My goal for the day may be, now with treatment, I've come to accept that some days my goal of the day is to get out of bed and brush my teeth and get back in bed. Or today I'm going to eat my food. I'm going to eat my lunch. If I don't do anything else today, as long as I eat my lunch today, I'll be good. I achieved something. I took care of my body.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of struggle that I have that nobody sees. And so I think with my treatment now and a different perspective on life, knowing my limitations and understanding that this is just a medical condition. Like if you broke your hip, broke your leg, and you were bedridden, you wouldn't have to explain yourself as much as you would if you had something that was invisible.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing with this illness, it's invisible. It's not easy for me to say I'm not able to come to that bake out day because I just cannot.
Yeah.
My body's not feeling like it. I can pull myself out of it. Oh, my leg is broken. I can't drive myself. So I'm going to sit out on the bake out today. Accept them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are these two, it is a medical condition, but we don't talk about this medical condition enough for it to be accepted as a medical condition. I have bipolar. I'm not having a good day. It's become it's because of the stigma of saying that you have a mental illness. And that seems weird to say something that you have a mental illness, you're depressed. Like, oh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
So something invisible is so hard to explain, and it makes us suffer in silence. And a lot of us suffer in silence and don't even get treatment, or some people don't even know that they're ill,
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that they're ill, because we are so afraid of getting checked up, or getting a diagnosis, or getting labels. If you had a heart palpitation, would you sit at home with it silently?
No.
It's so easy to go to the doctor and say, I'm having heart palpitations. Something's not right with my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were having suicidal thoughts, or you were sad all the time and you didn't know why, it is just expected for you to get out of it on your own and figure it out, and do some yoga, some breathing exercises, go out in the sun and get some sun, and everything's all right. Truth of the matter is, it's a medical condition that needs medical intervention, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's drug therapy, or whatever that you need. The treatment is as personalized and customized for you as any other kind of medical treatment. And I don't think people see that enough, or are open to it enough, because we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem is, like you said, you can't see it. Like, unfortunately, none of us are born with like a brain scanner in our own eyes, so we can't even physically know what is happening to another person. The other thing with bipolar is like you said, you have bipolar 2. There's bipolar 1, but like there's those two, and then everyone's experience who has bipolar is completely different. It's like it's the same case with anything. Like, they have symptoms for some things, and like sometimes the bipolar symptoms that they post are a little extreme, but that's because some people experience that. Not
Some people
everyone.
do experience that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone experiences those in like intense symptoms. And I
Yeah.
think what has happened is that we label people with bipolar with those intense symptoms. And it's the same if you look at people with like schizophrenia. You
Yeah.
immediately assume that these people are like the ones in the movies who go insane, who are
Yes.
mass serial killers, who just have
Yes.
this little demon on their shoulder that talks to them all the time. It's a real thing. It's not, this isn't the movies anymore. Like, this is
Yes.
something we have to talk about, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it, because there's a lot of high functioning people out there who have these things.
Isn't that funny that movies are based on reality, but we base our reality on movies?
Yeah, I've
We
never
actually,
thought of it like that.
I mean, obviously they put it in the movies because it exists in our society, right? And they want us to see what it is. But then, like, it's so highly dramatized that then our social conversations change because we saw this once in the movie, and like this is how it presents itself. However, whether it's true or not, no one wants to sit around to find out, because that's how powerful media is.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is like they'll put those extreme cases in the media because that's what's going to sell. No one in the vast majority of the population, well, I don't want to say no one, because I would, and I know a lot of people that would, but
Yeah.
like a lot of people who look at news and look at headlines aren't going to click something that says woman with bipolar lives perfectly normal. Like,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
no one's going to click that. They're going to go, woman with a bipolar disorder freaks out and tears shit up at a grocery store. Like that, those are the
Yeah,
headlines that sell, and that right away trickles down into everybody, because that's all they see.
absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Normalizing this mental illness, like being able to, for people to like even recognize that you have it. A lot of people go unrecognized and suffer. It is a torturous illness.
Yeah.
So I say this because I lived through it. And I was just talking to my husband the other day. I'm having a good stable run now. These past 3 months have been good and stable for me,
Hmm.
but I'm not completely happy or joyful or enjoying this time. I'm enjoying parts of it, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the next episode because I don't know when it's going to come and ruin this.
Yeah.
And I'm living in anxiety over trying to do as much as I can now because I'm feeling good. I need to do all these things that I want to do with my kids, because once I'm in an episode, I don't know how long that's going to last or when that's going to kick in. And I don't want it to kick in while I'm in the middle of something with my kids.
Yeah.
Like I live in these clunks of time, these blocks of time where I have to try my very best to plan my life in order for me to be present and enjoy it. And that's not a very simple, as simple as that sounds. It's not, because in the back of my mind, I'm constantly thinking about like, oh, I'm feeling a little this way. I'm very aware. I'm very aware of what's going on with my body and what's going on with my mind, because it's a whole physical experience as well as it is a mental or emotional one. And I feel things happening and I'm in anxiety over whether, oh, am I going to get into a hypomanic state now? Or then I get into a hypomanic state and then I'm like, oh my God, how long is this going to last? I cannot live with this anxiety. I'm in constant anxiety. I'm constantly trying to think things over and process things, process thinking errors, redirect and reframe my thoughts over every single thing. Let me give you an example. We can have a normal conversation and you can just say something like, oh, it's been great these few days. Like the weather's been great, hasn't it? And my mind, if you were having a casual conversation, I guess rational mind would say, yeah, it was great. Or no, I didn't enjoy it that much. I was indoors or whatever. But my mind goes to like, it has been the most excruciating time because this winter is killing me. It's too cold. I'm uncomfortable. I'm sad. I'm depressed. It's gray. I can't take any more of this. All these thoughts. And then I had to think to myself, like, okay, I could bring in my CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what I use to reframe my thoughts and pick out all the thinking errors. Okay, catastrophizing, fortune telling, this is not going to be this way forever, or and you have all these thoughts that have to correct the thoughts in order for me to be breathing again and say, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. All he was saying was the weather is fine. Just take it as that. And now let's move on to the next comment. And then the next comment comes. And then we do this dance all over again because my mind's just there anxious and in 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And we do it all over again and all over again and again and again and again. And if you think that was tiresome or exhausting, just listening to it, just one small conversation, now you imagine that throughout the day or throughout the days that I'm in an episode,
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely exhausting, both physically and mentally. I'm drained to no end. And it's not a fun way to be. I have medications. I am on treatment. I am on medication. And what that does is it helps me prolong the stages of stability. And then it also tries to level out the highs and the lows. So it's not as high as it could be without medication or as low as it could be without medication. It tries to level that up. But it's not a perfect science.
Yeah.
So I still have to do things. I do my thinking, my thinking exercises. I do meditation. I do hikes. I connect with nature. I do a lot of other things to balance out my life to make sure that my life is properly bolstered in order to be prepared for when these episodes strike.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not ideal. It's not normal, if you say what normal is, if we can say what normal is, or like based, or let's just say the TV moms,
Yeah.
right? Like housewife, that's not my life.
You don't want to be like
It's,
them.
I mean, like,
That's
if that is our gauge of normal,
yeah, I see
then
what you mean.
my life is not normal like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of internal turmoil. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of masking and trying to keep this hidden. I'm as transparent as transparent as I am with my children. They are aware of the times where I have no more control, but they are not aware of the times that I'm trying to mask it and trying to keep it together so I can enjoy time with them and try to be present with them. And that's a very painful realization that there are many times in my life that I'm not present because I've had to take some anti-anxiety medication or something in order to celebrate a birthday so that I don't pass out in a panic attack.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's tough, right? Like I when I was on my first type of medication, it was like an antipsychotic and it nulled my brain down completely, so I wasn't really there. It was like I didn't have emotion or reaction to anything. It felt like my brain was flatlined, and like It's tough, right? Because you're doing all these things to just fit in with society because society frowns upon what you have so hard. It's not fair. It really isn't. And there was a point I wanted to say, and I forget what that point was. Um, yeah, it's just like what you were saying. Like when you're in a quote unquote good period or good span of time, you always have that thought at the back of your mind, worried about when that next episode is going to happen. That's like your fight or flight is activated all the time. It's like back in if you were a
Yeah.
caveman, that idea that like a panic attack is coming up or like that stretch of panic
Yeah.
attacks is coming up, that's like a saber-toothed tiger in the bushes and you know it's there. Like how are
Yeah.
you ever supposed to sit down and chill with people knowing that that's there? I think that's what a lot of people don't get is like they just assume that like in your case bipolar disorder you're one or the other and that's it, that's just how you live, there's
Yeah.
no other thoughts about it. But there's
Yes.
like when you're in that happy spot, it's you're not happy completely. It's not like, oh, life is all great, life is sunshine and rainbows, because that's what people think, and then they go, why don't you work harder to get to that? It's like, well, when I am there I still worry about this low point. Like
Yeah.
it's such a tough idea for people to
And
grasp.
so there's also this thing with I like you just said that why can't you just get there? So I feel like this a large part of what I write in my book, I hope draws a clear picture about how it is something that cannot be helped. So bipolar disorder has environmental factors to it and there are biological factors to it. The environmental factors are the things where I do yoga and I do CBT and I do ACT and I do my talk therapy and I constantly remind myself of all the, I do gratitude journals. I try and get myself into a good space in my mind where it's healthy to bolster what is to come that I cannot control. That is the biological factor.
Yeah.
Things happen in my brain. There's a chemical reaction, chemical imbalances that happen in my brain that I cannot help. I didn't actually ask to have those, and those medications help me level those out. But it's not, like I said, not a perfect science. It's not completely gone, or it's I. And then I've tried like 12 different kinds of medication to find me the kinds that actually worked. It's not as easy as saying you have some have cold and you can take a cough syrup, or you have a headache, get you some ibuprofen and everything's fine, right? It's not as simple as that. It took me 10 years and 12 different pills for me to find one that actually works. And even in then, it doesn't guarantee me no episodes.
Yeah.
So in the time that I am in those episodes, I cannot help myself but to feel the way that I feel or do the things that I do. I remind myself of all the tools that I've been given through therapy. I remind myself through my going through talk therapy, and I have medication that can help anti-panic attack medication, my depression medication, whatever it is. But the truth of the matter is, telling somebody to like just get up, go outside, step outside, and take a walk. The truth is, I cannot. If I say I cannot, I truly cannot. I just cannot get myself out of the bed. It's like a huge lead ball that's on me, that there's no, it's pinning me down and there's no way for me to move or think out of it. I cannot think my way through it. Or I'm sad and there isn't a source of why the sadness is there or the grief is there, because it simply is the chemical reaction in my body, in my mind. It's not like you lost your job and you're sad. Maybe something like that, it's exacerbates the situation or triggers the episode. But when I'm in an episode, a lot of times there's no reason whatsoever. I can be living my life, and I live a pretty good life. I'm I'm privileged and I'm comfortable and I'm very grateful for the life that I have. I have very few worries other than my children. And so there really isn't a true reason. And that's the most painful kind of pain, to feel pain and not know where it's coming from,
Mm.
or not be able to think. Because if there was a source for the pain, if I had a bad breakup, I could pin it on the breakup and I could cry my eyes out thinking about all the sad things about the relationship in order for me to process that pain and let it go. But what do you do when the physical feeling of the heart racing, your, I call it emotional constipation.
No, I've heard that
On
term before. Yes, yeah.
the inside, you're feeling all these things, but your mind cannot reconcile a root cause for you to be able to pin it on and then process. Am I making sense? Like, you see like how like it's impossible, almost impossible for you to be able to just switch it off and go out for a walk,
Yeah, no,
because it's something that's incomprehensible.
I completely get what you're saying, because sometimes there are triggers, and then other times, because I just have depression and anxiety, but even sometimes for me, like it'll be a completely normal day and I'll have a panic attack and people go, "What's wrong with you?" Because I'm also privileged. I have a great life. But it just because you have a great life and you have a great support system, you're like, you've got a roof over your head, you've got all these things, that doesn't mean that you're just immediately all of a sudden going to be mentally healthy. That's not how that works.
Yes,
Like
that's the
depression,
problem. It's an illness.
well, exactly, mental illness doesn't give a crap about what your living situation is. It's going to target you anyway. But I completely get what you're saying, because when there's no trigger and it just happens, you start to really beat yourself up and really get angry, because you think, why am I having this? Because there's nothing to pinpoint it on, and there's no like base point to work with. It just kind of happens, and that's so frustrating to live with.
It's frustrating. It's a constant mental battle. So I'm constantly in battle of knowing and not understanding whether I'm really upset. Is this an okay kind of upset? Is this would normal people be upset with something like this, or am I actually having an episode? Am I overreacting? What extent am I upset? Is this okay to be upset? And how do I get over this? And
Mm,
I think things through. I think a lot more than somebody who probably doesn't have this. I wouldn't know, but I assume that processing things is a lot more laborious with this illness, with an illness, than it would be for someone who doesn't have an illness.
right. I'd love to know. But that thing that you said, people do this all the time, and if I could go back in time and talk or and be with my younger self, I would kick everyone who said this. I'd beat them up, because every time I would talk about, how I was feeling, or when I would react in a certain way that wasn't quote unquote normal, people would go, "You're overreacting," or "You're so
Yeah.
dramatic." Like those terms can like F right off, because we take like these people who are reacting this way, not by choice, by the way. No one wakes up in the morning and says, "Hey, I'm going to have a panic attack today. That'd be a great idea." Like, no one chooses to do this, but we take these people who experience that and just throw them on the ground and label them as dramatic or overreacting. Like, it's such a quick, easy solution, as opposed to sitting down and learning about these things. It's people have gotten way too lazy with it.
Or
Label,
even just accepting people for having different experiences. I think what this has taught me a lot is that everybody is an individual and you all have different experiences. And so even if what appeared to me as you overreacting could just be your reaction. And
yeah,
why does it matter? What does it matter for me to like place judgment or label on your reaction? I
we
think
live
if
in.
we had that respect for people and all these experiences, I think we would be more open to accepting mental illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. We're way too judgy. Way too judgy. We all have this perception of what life should be, and then if there's something that comes along that isn't that perception, we judge it immediately.
And that's hard, isn't it? Like the judgment is really what makes us understand the world around us or how we process the world around us. And we have been molded such to have certain judgment in order to anticipate interactions.
Yeah,
And so I think with this, I have become a bit more empathetic, a lot more empathetic, because I understand my experience of how difficult it is to have my experience and have no one know about it. And so I do find that I am more empathetic towards people and strange behaviors or behaviors that I don't understand. I'm just okay with it now. That's that person's way of being. Like, so that's just the way it is. It doesn't have to be anything. And hopefully that creating that kind of space of trying to create more of that kind of space, I hope allows for people to be able to step forward and say, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling this way and I feel like there's something wrong and I need help.
Yeah.
I want that to happen. I want people to be able to come out into spaces and say that I have thoughts in my mind or I have feelings in my heart and it doesn't feel right, and then be able to get help and accept help for that.
Yeah.
The way we talk about things and the way we stigmatize things and make things taboo to talk about is prohibiting a lot of people who need help from getting help. There's no need to suffer. Had I known this 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it probably would have saved me the 20 years of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
20 years of suffering of not without treatment, without help, without understanding what was going on with my mind, my body, my behavior, and my trauma. And so I hope that this changes and that it's considered as a medical condition, like just like anything else. You have a mind checkup as you have a body checkup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is what I love about what you're doing and why I'm thankful that you came on is because not only are you a great example for young, not just girls, but guys as well who have experienced something similar to you, you're a great example of like that life's not over for them and that there are ways they can, address the situation and grow from it, even though at times it seems impossible. But that's not the only reason. The other reason is because I know there's a lot of people out there who have never gone through something like that or who never have had experienced a mental illness like bipolar. And to show them someone like you who, has their moments, of course, but has written a book, has a family, has a job, like all these things with this mental illness and with that event that occurred to you at 19, it shows people that what we see in the movies isn't exactly what mental illness is, what rape, like it it shows people that our whole idea of mental illness and of rape as a whole, like it's flawed, and there needs to be different conversations happening, and there are conversations to be had, and it starts with not just people my age, not just people your age, but the younger generations as well, having them know their self-worth, having them more open to talk about things that are uncomfortable, age appropriately, of course, but starting at a young age, that's how we get to a place where like rape cases don't happen or judgment happens very minimally. Like that's how we'll get to that spot.
Where we talk about healing and healing people who are in pain,
Yes.
healing people who are suffering in silence. So another part I wanted to add, just we were talking about my personal experience with it and how my family copes with it, but I also want to touch on like how everybody can be good allies, good advocates for people who are suffering. 1 in 4 Americans suffer from mental illness or some form of neurological disorder. So that's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
who are suffering from some form of mental illness. But still, it's a taboo for us to talk about it. People don't really talk in your real life, like on shows like this, on TV, in the magazines, in the papers, we talk about it. But I feel like in my personal life, we all still kind of hush hush about it.
Right.
And and I think that being an ally is how to be an ally is such an important lesson to learn. Number one is like the expectations, like we talked about, expectations and judgments needs to be checked at the door when you go to help somebody. If you think that somebody's going through something and could use some help, then offer that help without judgment. Whatever you think you know, check it at the door, because even I approaching someone, so this is I have an example of like an experience I had. So I'd been in treatment for some time, and then I had a friend who was suffering from depression and had left a job and was living in a car, and I invited her to live with me, thinking that I was going to play the savior. I was going to be the one that has depression and understood depression, been through treatment. I'm going to be the one who can help my friend because I understand what she's going through. So I bring her into my home and I try to help her, giving her all the tools that I have, trying to get her to get into treatment, trying to drive her to her treatment, trying to get her to do all the things that helped me. And what ended up happening was she packed up and left
Mm,
in the middle of the night, and I didn't get to see her again. And that is one of those things in my life that I still feel very sad about,
yeah.
because I felt like there was such a failure on my part, missing the point, missing the point that what she needed was comfort and help and support, not guidance, not somebody to tell her what to do, not somebody to police her, not somebody to tell her, if you do A, B, and C, then if I do A, B, and C for you, then you should get through D to Z.
Hmm.
If I help you do this, then you should be doing that, which is very common because we think we're doing the best way. I was well meaning. I loved her and I wanted to be there for her. And I thought I had the tools, and yet I was wrong.
Yeah.
So what I learned from that was that if I'm going to ever help somebody again, it's going to come from a place with no judgment, no knowledge. Whatever I know should be checked at the door, because everybody has their own personal individual experience that they need to go through. And it's a personal healing process that everyone has that's different, that you can never know because you are not that person. Whatever you think you know about that person, you don't, because that person's life experience is within herself or himself, themselves. There's no way for you to be able to tap into that and think that you know what they're experiencing. So if you're going to be of help to them, you need to like offer it unconditionally, absolutely unconditionally, and ask about what they need and be there for what they need and provide what they need as they need it, and not what you think they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Sometimes,
that's a
yeah. Sometimes we try to play the savior
yeah,
with good intentions, of course, but like you said, it backfires a lot because as people, like me personally, I don't like being told what to do. I mean,
yeah.
I was on sports teams and stuff, so I liked when coaches told me what to do, but in terms of like my own life, people trying to dictate it, I'm like, no, no, I'm going to do what I do, and if you tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it more. Like that's always.
Especially like I thought that I had the information, right? Like I just sat here for an hour with you drawing out the experience of of bipolar disorder and life after rape or trauma, and sounds like I knew a lot, sounds that I've learned a lot, right?
Mhm.
But none of that matters if I was to help somebody else.
Yeah.
None of it matters because that was my experience and it is not applicable to anybody else. So, I mean, like, not applicable in the sense that no one's going to have the exact story as I have, but we pick up lessons, right? We pick and choose the lessons that we learn and we apply it. So, when you're helping somebody, you really need to be able to be in a space where you are okay with not knowing,
Yeah.
okay with learning and growing.
Yeah, it's all about, like you said, leave the judgment expectations at the door. But most people just want an ear. They just want
Yeah.
someone to listen. And
Yeah.
it seems insignificant as the person who is listening, but it's the it's one of the easiest and most effective tools that an ally can have for someone who's struggling. Just having that listening ear as opposed to butting in and telling you what to do, that does that moves mountains for someone who's going
Yes.
through something.
And in the conversations, instead of saying, well, if you're feeling sad, then I think you need to do this.
Mm,
Take a step back and go like, you're feeling sad. Oh, that sounds terrible.
yeah,
Okay, is there anything I can do to help?
that's the big one. If you do want to
Yeah,
help, that's how you do it. Is there
yeah.
anything I can do for you?
Validating someone's feeling is so important, I think, in those conversations. Validating someone's feelings and then providing the avenue for support, not the support, but the avenue for support. I am here for you.
Yeah.
Do you need this? Or I'm struggling. If someone says, I'm struggling with this, then you just say like, would it help if I did this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it would help? Do you want help? Do you want help, or do you want me to listen?
Yeah.
That helps too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that I thought was a very important thing for people to know if they were going to help somebody.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And being an ally is so simple. I think we overcomplicate it too much, but we do need them. A lot of people need them now more than ever because of lockdown and things going on. But having allies with everyone, that's you need allies. And if you don't experience that if you don't experience the things that you're being an ally for, that's okay. Because I think some people are scared to be an ally because they're like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't want to do anything. Like I've never experienced bipolar disorder before, so I'm just going to butt out. But just having that ear, you don't need to know anything.
Just know that it's a lonely experience.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's a very lonely experience, and it's just having somebody there to say, I'm here for you. What is it that you need?
Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, like, and I guess a good umbrella thing for everybody is like, if you're dealing with somebody who is having extreme emotions and who are worried about, if you're worried about suicide or harming themselves or something like that, there's always those hotlines, the National Mental Health hotlines, and it's good to have that on your phone. I guess just in case, if you're really afraid that somebody's going to do something like that, then you have that. But most of the times, I think on normal days, people just want somebody for support. People just want somebody to be there.
Yeah.
To not feel alone.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So your book, is it out?
No, it is not. I am in the middle of editing my manuscript right now.
Mm-hmm.
So hoping to see if it makes it end of this year or early next year.
I love it. So for the viewers, where can they find you if they are interested in the book or have questions or anything like that?
Sure, I have a website, ameliazachry.com. And Zachry is spelled a little funny. It's Zachry, ameliazachry.com. And that's where I have short stories, a little bit about an insight of my life with bipolar and my thoughts about rape, my parenting, and my life in general. Mm-hmm. And I'll update the website with updates on my memoir.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put that link down below. Amelia, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate this discussion that we've had.
Thank you so much. I am so appreciative for you holding space for me here today. And I hope everyone has gotten something out of our conversation today.
I hope so too. And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.